My guest tonight is a testament to the power of believing in yourself, regardless of how many times you're told no. After being passed over in the NFL draft, Curtis Eugene Warner didn't get his shot until the age of 26, when he was signed as a backup quarterback by the St. Louis Rams. He would become the fastest in NFL history to pass for 10,000 yards, one of only 3 quarterbacks to lead 2 different teams to the Super Bowl, and is a Super Bowl champion. But before he was named the Walter Payton Man of the Year, did you know he spent 4 years on the bench in college football, worked bagging groceries after graduating from college, and played arena football for 3 years? Tonight we'll learn what makes this undeniable icon who he is. A man who once said, "I expected to play well, I expected to lead my team, and I expected to win." Please welcome Pro Football Hall of Famer, Kurt Warner. Good to see you. You know, if somebody's going to tune into the show and learn about Kurt Warner for the first time, it's kind of a hard story to believe that it's real. Yeah. And I know you well enough from your days in St. Louis and beyond to call you a friend, but even when I go through it, I think, how many times could Kurt Warner have called timeout and given up?
The funny thing is, Joe, you understand that your life is your life. So you don't look at it from the outside going, man, I could have given up there, I could have given up there. You just take it one day at a time. And, you know, I look back and say, man, I'm glad that it took the route that it did now that I'm here. Although there was many days when I was going through it where I'm like, why can't I just have the easy road?
Tell me about what life was like in the early 70s in Iowa, born in 1971 in Burlington, Iowa.
You know, we actually moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is where I grew up. My parents got divorced when I was very young. So I was raised in a single-parent home by my mom with my brother, who was about 15 months older than me. You know, and we grew up very modest upbringing, didn't have a whole lot. And that's really why I think sports kind of gravitated towards sports, because the great thing about sports is all you need is a ball. You don't need a whole lot else. We didn't have a whole lot else.
And the divorce was hard on you.
It was difficult, because when you're a young kid, oftentimes you look at it inwardly. And, you know I did. I don't know how my brother felt about it, but early on, you kind of feel like, okay, what did I do wrong? You know, how did I cause this? What was my part in this? And so with me not having as much time with my dad, I think it was harder for us to be connected. And I think sometimes it's harder for dads to just, you know, look at us and say they love us. But I found out very early that I was good at sports. And so it was the one area where I felt like, you know, I could get the attention of my parents, maybe more specifically my dad at times, being that we were separated. I didn't get to see him that often, but he plays sports. He loves sports. I love sports. And it was kind of one of those things that I kind of gravitated towards him when we got time together. And I think, you know, ultimately that was why I wanted to chase that path, because all my greatest memories were surrounding, you know, having a ball in my hands.
Was it an "I love you, Kurt, I love you, Kurt" from both parents? Were you getting that reinforcement, or was that just implied by what they were doing for you?
I remember my mom getting up and, you know, working 2 part-time jobs in the middle of her full-time job that she had, you know, cleaning office buildings. Why was she doing that? She was doing that so we could have what we wanted. We could do what we wanted to do, and she was willing to make those sacrifices. And I think those are the things that really stand out about my mom growing up, was that she was willing to commit whatever she had to give us what we needed.
How crazy is it that at age 7, you basically declared that you were going to be a Dallas Cowboy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was just that I didn't really see myself as talented in any other area. And so sports was the one area where, oh, if I do this, people recognize it. So I didn't want to be a quarterback. I wanted to be a receiver. And so that was kind of my gig. I was going to make it to the NFL as a receiver, and quarterback came much later.
There was an inner strength in you, even at an early age. I read where your mom said you didn't really care what other people thought. And when I read your timeline, there were stretches where there weren't a lot of people believing in Kurt Warner.
Right.
except Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
That was put in you or developed in you,
Right.
counter to some of the things that you were dealt in life.
Right.
Is that fair?
It is fair. And I think, you know, when all this stuff is going on and all this stuff is going haywire and you can't make sense of things, you go to that one place you have where you can make sense of things. And I could go out on a football field and I could thrive on a football field, or step out on a basketball court and I could be the best player on the court. This is my safe haven when everything else is going haywire and I can't figure out this divorce thing or I can't figure out this school thing. I can go here and, you know, whether it's the self-esteem or whether it's your confidence, would always go sky high. And so I always had that confidence in myself that this is the one area I will always separate myself.
When you go out for football at high school at Regis, what position are you trying out?
As I said, I wanted to be a wide receiver. You know, that was my goal. I was a Cowboys fan. Drew Pearson, Tony Hill, those were my guys. I wanted to grow up to be those guys. And we had absolutely nobody try out for quarterback in high school. So our coach literally said,
Coach Padlock.
Coach Padlock. He lined all of us up on a line and said, throw it as far as you can. Like, that's the only thing that has to do with being a quarterback. If you can throw it really far, you're a good quarterback. But yeah, I threw it the farthest, you know, of everybody on the team. So right away he goes, okay, you're my quarterback. And I'm like, no, I'm your wide receiver. I'm not going to be quarterback. Trust me, I'm really good at wide receiver. He's like, nope, you're my quarterback. And so, I mean, I remember going home and I was crying that night. I mean, I'm a freshman in high school and I'm thinking, this guy is taking away my dream to play in the NFL. He's moving me to quarterback. I do not want to play quarterback.
So this guy, Coach Padlock, did two favors the way I see it. One, it was you're the quarterback. You're not going to be the receiver. Two, he played a game, which I'm sure at the time you didn't like, called Kill Kurt.
Yes.
Because let's say you were skittish in the pocket or you got rid of the ball. You got out of there, you know, when there was a heavy rush. But you were not allowed to throw the ball until he blew a whistle after enough time. So you had to dance and avoid trouble with guys coming at you.
Exactly.
Which became your calling card.
I know. Isn't it amazing? I mean, it was awful. It was the worst drill ever. You know, and then we just line up and do it again and again. I mean, my teammates or my friends, I mean, they couldn't wait for this drill. I mean, literally, I would just stand back there. I don't even know how we did it and how we got away with it because, I mean, they would just tee off on me.
Well, now you couldn't.
Well, yeah, they would plaster me and we'd line up and we'd do it. I mean, I was just a hitting dummy. You know, I mean, that was the whole drill. And, you know, it's crazy now because I remember it and I think, this is just awful. I mean, who wants to do this for a living?
The 1989 Shrine Bowl, we have video of it. And before we roll it, I think you see there's a leadership aspect to this, which I think is worthwhile showing the tape. So let's watch.
Okay. Come on, guys. Hard. This is it. 4 minutes. Let's push it. Warner, the quarterback. That's two. That's 2 points, and the North takes the lead.
Warner floated it out. Beautiful throw. Warner couldn't have thrown the ball any better.
Troy Jewell on the receiving end from Kurt Warner.
So there you are as a young man. Do you see what I see there? I mean, you're over there pumping guys up. I assume you didn't know a lot of those guys, or you weren't great friends with them.
Yeah, it was, you know, one of those all-star games from your state where they bring a bunch of guys in from all over. And probably the thing that jumps out at me most about that game, you know, even before the game, we had somebody come in, because at these games what they do is they bring in, you know, former player or motivational speaker the night before the game to try to pump you guys up because, you know, most of these kids are going off to college and have dreams of playing in the NFL. And I'll never forget that the speaker got up there and he looked at all these kids, 100 kids that, you know, had this dream of playing in the NFL. And he looked at it and he said, maybe one of you will get the opportunity to play in the NFL. You know, he looked at all these kids and he's like, I'm like, seriously? This is our motivational speech?
Right.
You know, and I remember looking at my family and we had some friends of the family there. And I remember one of them kind of looked at me like, oh, sorry, your dream's over. And I'm thinking, well, I'm glad we brought you. You're supposed to be encouraging me. But I remember looking back and saying, I'm going to be that one. If there's only going to be one, I'm going to be that one. And so it was something that was ingrained in me very early on that this is what I'm going to do. You know, so a lot of times you probably wouldn't have seen that same guy anywhere else, but you get me between the lines.
Not with girls in high school.
Oh, my gosh. No, not with girls. I didn't date.
But, I mean, you're a good-looking kid. You're the quarterback, you know?
Yeah,
No,
didn't have a whole lot of confidence outside of that. In anything else that I did, my confidence came in sports. So when I got between those lines, I became a different person, so to speak, or I became a more confident person, a person whose character would be able to shine in those moments where you may not have seen it in the other areas of my life.
How important at this point in your life is a scholarship?
I don't know to this day whether we could have afforded it. I knew it was going to be very, very difficult for my family to figure out a way for me to get to college if I didn't get a scholarship. So that had become my goal, that whatever it was, and really whatever level, of course, you know, our mindset is you want to play Division I, you want to play the big schools. For me, it was I wanted to be an Iowa Hawkeye.
I read somewhere where you went for a visit.
I did, yes.
And here comes Hayden Fry.
Right.
And you're like, here's my moment.
This is my moment, yes.
And what happened?
You know, you grow up in Iowa, the Hawkeyes are the big thing, no pro sports team. Everybody wants to be a Hawkeye. So I got invited down for an unofficial visit, and we're in the locker room before the game. Coach Fry comes in, and he's talking to everybody. You know, he gives us a little speech, and then he starts walking over to me. And I'm like, this is it. Okay, he does know who I am. He's going to come over here, and this is my moment. I'm going to get offered a scholarship. So, you know, I stand up off the bench, and I reach my hand out, and, of course, Hayden Fry walks right past me to the guy behind me, you know, shakes his hand. It's one of those like, okay, yeah, I didn't, I wasn't really expecting, but he walked right by me. Had no idea who I was, never got an offer from the Hawkeyes.
Did it crush you or motivate you?
I think it was more humbling and more embarrassing. So I went through basically the whole football season with no scholarship offers. And then at the last minute, the University of Northern Iowa came to me with a partial scholarship for me to play football. You know, so I went off to college, and there was a guy that was a year older than me. And so when I was a freshman, he was a sophomore. He started, you know, as a sophomore. Without question, he was the better guy when I was a freshman. So, okay, I'll sit on the bench for a year, but I'm going to overtake him next year. And, you know, I'll start for 3 years, and it'll work, and I'll parlay that into an NFL career. So we got into my sophomore year, but the coach ended up deciding to stay with the older quarterback that had started for a year over me. And he looked me in the eye and he goes, the reason you're not playing is because you're not very good in practice. We're talking about practice.
Right.
I mean, practice. Yeah. When I get into games, I'm really good, but practice? Really? Is it that important what I'm doing in practice? So what I didn't really understand at the time was that they're watching everything I did. They were watching every time I got under center in practice because that was the only way they were going to have any idea of how I could play in game-type situations.
So did they have a point?
It changed the course of everything for me. As I got older, I mean, I competed in every practice. I didn't want a single ball to ever hit the ground. I wanted to complete every single pass in every practice, regardless of what the situation was. And it was instilled in me in college because ultimately that was the reason that I wasn't playing.
At some point, was the frustration overwhelming for you, knowing it's got to be really debilitating to know that you're that good?
Yeah.
You're at Northern Iowa, you went there to play, and you're not getting a chance. Did you contemplate quitting the program?
There was a moment where I called my mom, and I just said, you know what? I'm either going to figure out a way to transfer somewhere where I can play. At that point, it was like, I'm going to go to Division III school, just somewhere where I can get on the field and play again because I just want to play. You know, my mom, she just encouraged me, and she told me, she just said, be grateful for this opportunity that you have. You know, it doesn't look like you want it to look right now, but don't let that deter you from the opportunity that you've been given. And then she said, just keep preparing. You never know when that moment may come. That moment may come where you get thrust in there. Are you going to be ready? That conversation with her really shaped not only what would happen in my football career, but would really shape who I would become as a person as I would face new and different things, you know, through the course of the next 20 years.
You know, it's funny how life works and where opportunity pops up. And it was around that time, you're just turned 21, you're thinking about maybe transferring.
Yep.
You're frustrated with your football career at Northern Iowa, and you go to your buddies take you to a country bar.
Right. Yeah.
And you see this woman, this woman out in the middle of the dance floor.
Yeah, that was, Brenda caught my eye very quickly. There was something about the person that she was that just drew me to her. When I got to know her, there was just a depth there that was different than the people that I was around. 2 o'clock came and the lights flickered and it was time to go. And so I walked her out to her car, and that was when she looked up and told me, I just want you to know, I'm a divorced mother of 2, so if I never see you again, I will completely understand. And so it intrigued me to say, I want to get to know her.
And there's an
a little bit
honesty
more.
there, isn't there? I mean, right out of the gate, it's like, here's
Exactly.
who I am. I'm a divorced mom, one of her children's special needs boy,
Right.
who's this beautiful gift in your life. Without that trip to the country bar, maybe you don't have that introduction to this woman who would
Right.
become kind of the strength behind your public life.
No doubt. I was blessed to have certain situations, certain people come along throughout my entire journey that really shaped my character and shaped who I would become, and nobody greater than Brenda.
So you go from this meeting with Brenda, who would become the love of your life, into eventually your senior year where you finally get a chance to play.
Yeah.
And you're the Gateway Conference Player of the Year. But I guess the question on your mind has got to be, have I shown enough in this small window to make anybody in the NFL pay any attention to me?
And that was really the whole question, is that at that point you kind of forget about, oh, am I going to get drafted? I just want an opportunity. Did I do enough in 1 year that somebody says, we'll give you a chance?
So the draft in '94 in April comes and goes, no draft. You do get some interest from teams. After the draft, teams will call, and if nothing else, they want to camp arm somebody to come in. But of all the teams that you could go to, you go to the Green Bay Packers, that has Brett Favre, Mark Brunell, and Ty Detmer.
Right. And Brett, I walked into camp in the first week, I'm like, this dude's special. I mean, I could just tell, even though it was the very beginning of his time with Green Bay, you could just see how special he was. But to compete against those guys on a daily basis and go, I can do that. I can make that throw. I can play just as well as them. That even though I didn't get the opportunity that I wanted there, I left there going, I can play at this level. There is no question about it. Now I just need to get a legitimate opportunity to compete, because I really wasn't given much of an opportunity in Green Bay because they had those guys and they knew those guys could play. And so you find yourself going, well, there's no real opportunity for me to play football this year. I'm not going to get another chance in camp. So what do I do now? Do you spend the next 12 months just trying to prepare? As I said, Brenda, I was actually living with Brenda and her parents and her 2 kids because I didn't have any money to my name. Ended up finding a job stocking shelves. So I would go in about 10:30 at night and work until about 5:30 in the morning. Come home, sleep for a couple hours, watch the kids all day long, work out in the afternoon. Brenda and I would have a little dinner together and then back to work again. And so that was the life. And so there's
eating on food stamps.
Yeah, she was, from food stamps from before, and me making $5.50 an hour.
But throughout all of this, Kurt, you're thinking, still, I just need my shot.
There was never a time where I got a chance to play and I didn't play well. And so that's what I think, of all the things, when people say, what kept you going, that was it, is that until somebody shows me that I can't play, I can't give up on this dream, because all I know is that when I do get that opportunity, I excel.
So Iowa has an AFL team, an Arena Football League team, the Barnstormers, with weird helmets with things on the
goggles.
The goggles on top of the helmet, which always kind of freaked me out. But you get an opportunity to play with them. Was that a come down for you?
Well, huge. I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I am so much better than arena football. While I'm working for $5.50 an hour in a grocery store, I'm thinking to myself, I'm so much better than arena football. And of course, the first thing I asked was, how much do you make? And at that time, you made $800 a game, and you got $1,000 if you won. So, I quickly did the tally on what that would look like compared to what I was making in a grocery store. And so I decided to give it a shot.
It's a crazy game.
It is a crazy game.
Guys are flying all over the place. It's on this small little field, and everything's just crammed down. That was kill curse.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because with all that crazy stuff, I fell in love with the game again. Is that I had a bunch of guys that didn't care how much money they made, didn't care what the accommodations were, probably were never going to play in the NFL, or, if they still had that dream, was unlikely like me. but they just love playing football.
And you were really good at this particular brand of football because it was your calling card in the NFL, was your toughness. I mean, there's not a teammate I could talk to that wouldn't say he was one of the toughest guys on our team. That's where that comes from.
Had I made it with Green Bay, would I ever have been the same quarterback that I was after playing arena football? You know, funny story with Brett Favre, as you mentioned, he was just getting his start with Green Bay. From the time I was in camp in 1994 until the day I retired in 2009, Brett Favre did not miss a single start in the National Football League. Not a single start. So had I made the team there, who knows when I would have gotten my first snap in the National Football League. Instead, I get cut, and I probably go play more football in the next 4-year period than anybody in any football game ever. So I got a chance to become a quarterback. At 1 year in college, there's no way I would have been the same guy. And so we always talk about things happen for a reason and how it works out. Without question, that time in arena football made me so much better as a quarterback.
And that's kind of the means to an end for you getting to the NFL and a potential tryout with the Chicago Bears.
Okay, well, the story goes is that in arena football, one of the other coaches on one of the other teams was making calls to try to get me out of the league. And so he was familiar with the general manager of the Bears at the time. So they called, and of course, I had been waiting 3 years for an NFL tryout. So they called, and I was like, when and where? I'm in. And after they called me, I ran and told my wife, I'm like, next Friday, I'm going to Chicago for a tryout with the Bears. And she kind of just looked at me, you know, funny. And I'm like, why are you not excited for me? And she goes, well, because we're getting married on Saturday. You're not going to Chicago the day before our wedding. Okay, we got plans. And I was like, because I forgot all about it. The Bears called. I'm in. This is my chance.
You're nothing if not honest.
Exactly. I forgot all about it. So I had to call the Bears back, and I'm like, okay, I can't do it. I'm getting married on Saturday. But any other day, I'm in. So we worked it out for the next week. So I came back and I told my wife, I'm like, all right, we're good for next weekend. We'll get married. My tryout's the following week. She gave me the look again. I'm like, what now? She goes, our honeymoon. We're going to Jamaica the following week. Okay, called the Bears back again. Any other day that you want me to work out, I'm in. They said, okay, you go on your honeymoon. We'll get in touch with you, and we'll get a workout in after the honeymoon. The night before we left from Jamaica from our honeymoon, I woke up the next morning, and I had a fever. I was sweating. I looked down. My right elbow, my throwing elbow, was swollen about the size of a grapefruit. And they're like, well, it was probably a scorpion or a centipede, but you got bit. And, you know, there's really nothing you can do about it. It's just going to take time to work through this. So I called the Bears back once again and had to tell them, hey, I got bit on my throwing elbow by a centipede.
So they think you're insane.
Really? I did. Yes. Needless to say, the Bears never called back. So that tryout went out the window, and I'm just crushed. I thought, that's it. That was my last chance. Here it was, right in front of me. I didn't even get to the point where I could throw a football for them. And that's when a couple weeks later, the Rams called and offered me a tryout. So when I thought it was going to be my last opportunity, around the corner came another one.
I talked to Dick Vermeil. He said Kurt Warner showed up, and the first thing I knew that was different about him was he knew every play in our playbook. So you obviously took this as kind of last chance cafe.
Yeah, no, there was no doubt. I mean, I was 27 years old at the time. And
so you're going to be a 27-year-old, in essence, rookie.
A 27-year-old rookie.
And then you, as the scout team quarterback, were just wearing out the first-string defense of the St. Louis Rams. He said, I knew one of two things. Either this guy could really play or our defense was awful because you made the defense look terrible, and then it began, right? And you stuck, finally.
I ran into Dick in the hallway the day that cuts were being made. And I ran into him, and he goes, I want you to know you made the team. And he told me, he goes, just watching you, I don't know what it is, but there's something different and something special about you. And he said, I couldn't let you go without figuring out what it was.
He told me
something special there.
He told me it was your character. And he said I could see it on him the minute he arrived. And I said, was it because this was a 27-year-old rookie who was married now and had kids and, you know, had been bouncing around here and there? And he said, yeah, that was part of it. He showed up different than anybody that had shown up for the first days in a Rams uniform. So he saw it. Yeah. But the way you became the starter was through this tragic injury to Trent Green, and he gets hurt in the preseason.
Yeah. I mean, he was the reason that anybody had hope in our team whatsoever. We were 4-12 the year before. He came in and was lighting it up. We added Marshall and Torrey, but he was lighting it up, and people are like, oh my gosh, this team has a chance.
So when Trent Green goes down on a hit by Rodney Harrison, and now the quarterback that they've paid money to run this operation is lost with a torn-up knee for the rest of the year, and Dick Vermeil gives a press conference where he cries, and he basically says something like, we will rally around Kurt Warner. And I said to him, why were you crying? Was that because you were heartbroken for Trent? Was that because you thought this whole thing was going down the drain?
This was Dick Vermeil's third year in St. Louis. And all the speculation was, they don't win this year, Dick Vermeil's going to be fired.
You're lining up in game 1 of the NFL season, and it is now or it is never.
Right. I know it's the NFL. I know it's against the best players in the world. But this is what I'm good at. You know, this is what I do, and I believe that without question, I'm going to be successful now. But there was a part of me that was extremely nervous about it because I knew if I blew this, I would probably get cut from this roster and never get another chance.
So you end up throwing 3 touchdowns in game 1. You throw 3 touchdowns in game 2. You throw 3 touchdowns in game 3. First time that's happened. And now the San Francisco 49ers, the divisional rival, that's pummeled the Rams 17 straight times.
Yeah.
They're coming to town. Was this game maybe a little different because of the history there?
No question. This would be a defining moment for our team. We could go 14-2 on the season, but if we lost those 2 games to the 49ers, it wouldn't have mattered. We had to beat them if we wanted to go where we thought we had the potential to go.
This is when the NFL started to believe.
They go 1st and 10 from the 14. Warner, pump fake. Into the end zone, touchdown. Warner going back for more. Here he is. Got Isaac Bruce wide open. Bruce, he'll go in again. His 3rd touchdown of the day. Warner only 3 incompletions all day. Going for Isaac Bruce. Bruce pulls away. He's got it. Touchdown.
And that's just a great pass by Kurt Warner.
Good to see.
That is good to see. That is good to see.
You can't get sick of watching that.
No, never. Never.
Even Sports Illustrated.
Right.
They put on their cover in October of '99, who is this guy?
Yeah.
That's Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
It's like you can't make it up. I mean, I know you had success in your mind and you were always worthy of the opportunities you got and fought hard to get here, but this is the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, that was one of those moments. I collected Sports Illustrated when I was growing up. And so that was always, you know, I had some with Michael Jordan and hanging on my walls. So that was one of those moments where we're kind of like, oh my gosh, this is getting real right now, that, you know, this thing that I had collected for so long, I found myself actually on the cover.
So it's great.
No, thank
you. But you were the perfect guy, Kurt, as it turned out, for this fast break, up-tempo Mike Martz offense called the greatest show on turf. Literally, you were created by God to run this offense.
Without question, the way we played football fit the way I played football. And, I mean, it was perfect for what I did. The way we threw the ball down the field, the way that we attacked, the way we read the field, instead of going low to high, we read it and went for big play down to short play. Those were the ways that I played the game and had always played the game. And so, for me, I felt like if this is my one opportunity, it's a perfect storm. I've got exactly, Marshall, Isaac, Torrey. I've got a system that plays to what I do. Now I just need to go out and play football.
Going into that postseason, I would imagine you've dealt mentally and emotionally with the pressure all season long. You eat pressure for breakfast when you're playing for your dinner, so to speak. What was it like going into that postseason?
there was a lot of confidence. I mean, first of all, I mean, we were really good that year. So we were on like an 8-game run. So there was a whole bunch of confidence going into the playoffs that this team had a chance to win it all. But then there's the other side of that going 13-3 and being on the cover of Sports Illustrated and having everybody talk about you, you go one and done in the playoffs and you just kind of become another story. And so going into that first playoff game that we played against Minnesota, Mike Martz called me up and told me what play we were running first in that game. So for 3 days, I went over that play in my mind and every different scenario on what could happen. So we go into that playoff, run the first play of the game, I throw a 60-some-yard touchdown pass to Isaac Bruce. And so that was one of the coolest things because all this pressure and we felt all this anxiety and all that disappeared real quickly because the very first throw we made was a touchdown pass, settled us all down, and we were able to make the run from there. And then I'll never forget after we won the NFC Championship game that after
Which was
that
a heck of a game.
It was an unbelievable game. You know, crazy. There's crazy stories that go into that one as well. But I remember laying on my bed with my wife, and it was after this whole whirlwind. We went through the playoffs. You know, I felt like I hadn't slept in weeks. We're like pinching each other, even though we were too tired to pinch each other, going, this is really happening. We are actually going to the Super Bowl after everything. And like you said, a crazy year. That was one of those moments where it really sunk in for the first time that year because it'd been such a whirlwind with so many different things where we took a deep breath and just looked at each other and said, this is really happening. We are going to the Super Bowl. Who would have ever, I mean, we would have never imagined in a million years that we would be there. And that was one of those moments that I'll never forget, that it was just the two of us, nobody else around, where, you know, we kind of grasped it and where we were and where God had taken us in a short period of time.
You guys get up to a 16-0 lead.
Right.
And when I talked to Dick Vermeil, he said Kirk got hurt in the first half. It was a rib injury.
Right.
And he said, I wasn't 100% sure that he was going to be able to come back out in the second half.
I was 100% sure. There was no doubt. Yeah,
that's what he said about you. He said, Kurt walked up to me and said, don't worry about it.
Yeah, there was no doubt.
But that's that toughness again. I mean, you've been ragdolled. And when you play in a Mike Martz offense, you're going to get hit as the quarterback.
Knew you were going to get hit. I don't even know if that was toughness. That was simply just, we traveled too far to get here. There's no way that I'm leaving this game.
Let's see what happens next.
A 16-point Ram lead has been erased.
Couldn't ask for a better script. Let's go win it right now. Let's go win it right now.
And the Rams have won the Super Bowl.
Love you, Coach. I love you, too. Thanks for the team.
It's such, you know, that moment, it gets lost with the applause, but you know, Dick Vermeil says, I love you too, and you say, thanks for the chance.
Yeah.
That's all you needed was a chance.
I mean, that's what I believed. You know, I told you before, I believed I needed the chance, but, you know, the hardest part oftentimes is somebody giving you the chance, somebody else believing in you enough to give you that opportunity. You know, I remember my wife, you know, and when I went over, you know, because it kind of become, I don't even know where it started, you know, kind of our ritual after games.
It was almost like the camera, it's like everybody waited for the kiss after
so she was in the front row somewhere in St. Louis, and somehow it led to a kiss, and then it became a kiss every time. And so there, right after the game, that's the first thing I did. And, you know, all I remember her saying, we did it. We did it. You know, that was the only thing I remember from that moment was just her saying, and just being in that moment with her, like, we did it. You know, whatever else happens from this point, what we had been dreaming about, what we had been chasing after, we did it.
It was all there, and you guys went on a burst there where it's as good as the NFL's ever seen.
Yeah, it was incredible. It's funny because oftentimes we don't understand what we're a part of until after. And I think that was the case there, is that we never really understood how special that group was.
Well, you didn't have to wait long to get back to the Super Bowl. 2 years later, the 2001 season, you end up against the Patriots in what was, if you believe Vegas, a very lopsided matchup going in. This is, we're thinking as the viewing public, we're going to crown the Rams as this dynasty, and what we ended up seeing was the beginning of the New England Patriots dynasty because that was Tom Brady's first spin in the middle of the stage, and he ends up winning that game. not without a big fight from you guys, but how disappointing was that loss in the Super Bowl with arguably as good, maybe better team?
Probably better. I mean, it was devastating. You can win a lot of games, but the ones that stick with you the most are the opportunities that you miss. We missed an opportunity to do something special. We missed an opportunity to win 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. And we missed the opportunity to see how good this team could have been, because that was really the beginning of the end for what would be the greatest show on turf. It slowly, started to break apart after that. We took it into the next year, and we were still holding on to what we had the last year. I think we started out the next year 0-5 or 0-6, a team that arguably was as good as the team that went to the Super Bowl. We started out 0-6, and that's when the whole thing started to fall apart, because we never let go of the disappointment. And to celebrate even what we accomplished, even though we didn't finish it the way we wanted to, we held on to that and tried to make up for a missed opportunity. And in doing that, we just spiraled downward.
Because in June of 2004, you're released by the Rams.
Exactly.
Which I would imagine, if not then, you look back and you go, man, I went from 2-time MVP, Super Bowl MVP, to out of a job.
Yeah.
That didn't end well with St. Louis.
It didn't end well. And, I think we were as surprised as anybody.
Did you feel betrayed at all?
I think there was parts of it where, you tried to fight that instinct, but there were parts of it that were very disappointing. That things that were so good could go so bad or become so bad so quickly. And I think the most disappointing part to me was the perception of me as an individual, and probably more importantly, my wife, in the media, stuff that was unwarranted. Because the one thing we had always hung our hats on through this whole thing was character and standing for something and being certain kinds of people. And during that period, that was taken for a little bit of a ride.
And it's not you. It's easy if they're taking shots at you.
Right.
But when they're taking shots at your wife, who's been your partner, and everybody, celebrating, and then all of a sudden this is going sideways, then that's a different story.
No question.
And you want to stand up and tell the world, no, look.
Right.
This is what's going on behind the scenes, whether it was a clash with Martz or whether it was whatever it was.
There's part of you that wants to do that and let everybody know and scream from a mountaintop. And then there's the other side that is saying, and the side that we chose is saying, we're going to stand on our character, and we're going to let that carry us through, and we're going to believe that at the end of the day, that's going to win out. And so that became the next chapter, was having to prove to people that there were other factors that were involved there outside of just the fact that Kurt can't play football anymore.
Of all places, you end up in New York, right? And you're there. Are you thinking, I'm going to New York to teach Eli Manning how to play quarterback, and it's only a matter of time, and this is how this is all going to come to a close for me? I'm playing the back nine, so to speak. Or do you know you can still play?
I think both of them are a little bit true. I mean, I knew Eli was coming. I knew
they bet the franchise.
I knew he was the future. I just wanted 16 games to show the rest of the league that I could still play. That was where I went to New York, because young rookie, I can at least play the first part, and then he can take over.
And you played well.
Right. Now, I was hoping that I'd get 16 games before that future stepped in, but I only got 9. But ultimately, it turned out, because Arizona and Denny Green watched those 9 games, even though it wasn't greatest show on turf 9 games, it wasn't 300 yards and 3 touchdowns 9 games. There's still something here, and he was able to give me another opportunity to compete in Arizona.
But another team that had been down, right?
They were the losingest team of the last 5 decades in the NFL when I went there.
With the longest championship drought to this day.
Exactly, to this day. So part of it was like a match made in heaven. Here's the guy that's never going to be successful and never should be successful and not going to be successful again. And here's the organization that's never going to be successful and never has been successful. And here we are with this marriage at a time when, everybody's looking at us going, they belong together, right? They're never going to win and they're never going to be successful, but they belong out there together. And then there was that other side going, this could be the perfect storm. That if I can come here and help change this, and we can build something here, and we can have success here, that will probably speak louder than anything I had done throughout my entire career, even from a grocery store to a Super Bowl. If we can have success here, you know, it can really be the final chapter and put a perfect stamp on what would be an incredible career.
So let's read this quote on the wall. I expected to play well, I expected to lead my team, and I expected to win. What does that quote mean to you?
When I look back at the career, I see what happened when I was between the lines. So when I played in high school, the best player on the field. When I played that 1 year in college, best player on the field. When I played in arena football, best player on the field. So all I saw this whole time was when I got an opportunity, I was the best player on the field.
So that's it, right? I mean, that continued on to the final team you played for,
right,
the Arizona Cardinals, and despite all the history of losing, you expected to play well and you expected your team to win.
Yeah, but like I said, it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And so the first couple years, you know, we won, I don't even know, 4 games, 5 games, 6 games those first couple years. It was the second year where I got replaced for Matt Leinart. You know, there was a point there where I thought about retiring and thought, well, this is it. You know, I mean, if I'm here and I can't start here and Matt's taking over, he's the future. And I couldn't be one of those guys that says, okay, now I'm a backup. That just wasn't in my makeup. And then in a crazy, crazy change of circumstances, Denny Green, who brought me to Arizona and believed in me, got fired, and in came Ken Whisenhunt. And Ken Whisenhunt, he had an open mind to say, I want to win, and I want to play the best players that are going to win. So every position is a competition. We're going to play the best player regardless of whether that's the young rookie or that's the old vet that people aren't sure if he can play anymore.
So this team is really good, and then at the end of the year, not so good.
Right.
And the team's starting to kind of take a nosedive at the time when it's the most important to be hot going into the playoffs.
You know, down the stretch, you know, everybody's saying we had the easiest division in football, so we played 4 playoff teams down the stretch, and every one of them beat us by like 30 points. And I'll never forget that it was Chris Collinsworth that came out and said, this is the worst playoff team ever. You know, not the worst playoff team this year. You know, in the last decade,
Chris.
He said, this is the worst. I know.
Chris.
But again, I understand where he was coming from. You know, and like I said, we played 4 playoff teams and we got destroyed by all of them. But I'll never forget, because that was kind of how I was feeling. Like, here we are getting to the playoffs and we're the worst playoff team ever.
And then one day you get a letter penned by Brenda from the perspective of your son, Zach. And it says, remember me when you want to give up. Remember I didn't.
Yeah.
Remember me when you think life is hard. Remember my life is.
Yeah.
And the last one, remember me when you want to hurry through life. Remember me, slow down.
Yeah. And the amazing thing about that is, so my son now is actually 28. So he suffered a traumatic brain injury when he was 4 months old. So he was told that he'd be lucky to sit up, fortunate if he lived, and he was able to, you know, graduate high school and all of that, but still deals with a lot of intellectual and developmental disabilities. If there's anybody that's given me, you know, perspective in life as I've gone through this whole entire journey, it's that young man right there. I mean, it's a young man that you watch struggle every single day with every little thing that he's ever had to do. And you never hear him complain. You know, you never hear him say, why me? You see him keep going, keep striving. You see him, you know, exceed every expectation that everybody has ever had for him. And so that letter just kind of, you know, hit me at a time when I needed it and allowed me to gain a different perspective as we were taking that stretch run and heading into the playoffs.
So, yeah, it's beautiful. You start this Cinderella run now, the playoffs start, nobody's counting on the Cardinals for anything, and you get to the Super Bowl. You get to the Super Bowl at the age of 38.
38, yeah.
What was it like preparing for that at 38, knowing this could be realistically the last shot?
Right. It was the coolest thing that I experienced in my whole time because I had a whole different perspective. Because of that letter, because of where I was in life, I had a whole different perspective on what this was about. The first one was a magical run and I wanted to win. The second one was a disappointment because I didn't win. And the third one was, nobody can believe that we're here. Let's enjoy this moment no matter what happens. And that was the coolest thing about that run, was just watching everybody else start to believe the Arizona Cardinals are going to win the Super Bowl. And I think everybody believed it for at least a moment.
Here are the highlights.
First to win 6 Super Bowls.
I mean, that close.
I mean, it was. You know, the funny thing is that when I look back and when I say I have perspective, you know, sometimes you can win when you lose. And without question, that game taught me that more than any others, is that team and what we accomplished, and even if I look at my career, we won that day. You know, 2 minutes to go, everybody in the world going, the Arizona Cardinals, we didn't win, are good enough to win the Super Bowl. Worst playoff team ever, quarterback that can't play anymore. I mean, that was a win for us. And it was one of the greatest games I ever played in. It was, as you said, it's a great football game. You learn to tip your hat to great players when they make great plays on the biggest of stage. We had guys that did that. They had guys that did that. But it was just, to me, I left that stadium winning that game. You know, whether I got the ring or not, that was a win for me. That was a win for our organization. And it was a special, special moment for me, especially at the tail end of my career.
Before that game, you received the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. What did that mean to you?
That was the award of all the awards that I would have wanted to win more than anything else. I grew up a Chicago Bears fan, being in Iowa, and Walter Payton was right down the street. The man that he was, the person that he was, the father that he was, I looked up to him. And we've always believed that when it's all said and done, we want people to talk about who we are, the people, before they ever talk about who we are, the football family or the football player. And so that was a really, really special moment to come all the way back and be in the Super Bowl and knowing it was coming to the tail end of my career, to say, this is what I want to be remembered for more than anything else.
You come so close in 08, you go back to the playoffs the next year.
Yeah.
Or you win this incredible back-and-forth game against the Green Bay Packers, which I had the honor of calling. It was unbelievable, like a pinball game, the way you two were lighting up the scoreboard. But the last play of your career happens in the playoffs following week against the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
This hit that we will show you is the end of the end on the field for Kurt Warner.
Warner on 2nd and 7. It is intercepted by Will Smith. Wow, did he get hit? Kurt Warner still down.
We'll update you as soon as we can when we get something official.
That's the way it ended. Tell me about that hit. And
that's the exclamation point.
Yeah, I mean, that I work with a guy who had one of those hits as well. You just stretched out your neck, I think, just by some sort of physical response to watching that. That was a vicious, vicious hit.
Yeah, it was. You know, but I by no means look at it as an illegal hit, a cheap hit in any way, shape, or form. It's part of the game. But it was, without question, the hardest hit that I ever took in my life. And a lot of people say, well, that's what made you retire. Just to set the record straight, I knew halfway through that season I was retiring. Only
was
a few
it hard
people
to walk away?
I mean, there was parts of it that were hard. There was parts of it that were easy. I knew halfway through that year, I told my wife, I'd actually told Larry Fitzgerald. Those were about the only two people that really knew. I always prayed when I was going through this journey that God would let me know unequivocally when it was time to walk away. Because I always thought the hardest part would be if I didn't know for sure, and I had a great peace about the way it had all played out, and that it was time to step away from the game and to cheer on my kids now.
In 2017, you went into the Hall of Fame. There was only, for anybody who knows you, there was only one person who was going to present you that night in Canton, Ohio.
Yeah.
It was your partner,
Yeah.
Brenda.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It's a tough question for me because I don't really know how I fit into the Hall of Fame. But that moment for me and that night for me was a celebration of Brenda. It was a celebration of my kids. It was a celebration of those people and my parents and the people that were along for the ride, that even though I don't know how I fit in, and, I still have trouble, whether I belong in the Hall of Fame or not. But that moment to me was the moment to say thank you to all of those people that took me on this incredible journey.
What's next for you?
I don't know, but there's a lot ahead. I think that to me is the coolest part of being a professional athlete, is that you get a chance to live an entire life and accomplish something, and you retire when you're 38, 39 years old, and you've got the other half of your life left. And I don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, I'm going to continue to stay involved with the game. I mean, first of all, I got 7 kids and now a grandkid. That becomes priority number one, so they can chase their dreams like I did. It's being a husband and doing that well for the next, 40 some years. But there's something out there that I'm going to do to impact people, and that's what I'm waiting for. Something that God calls me to, in which it's a greater legacy in the next 40 than it was in the first 40. That when people talk about me, Hall of Fame is just a passing sentence that they have, because I want to do something bigger that truly impacts the world around us and our community in an incredible way.
Here's how we end.
Okay.
Fun questions. Would you rather have a 1-minute conversation with your past self or with your future self?
I'm going to say my past self.
What would you say in that 1 minute?
I think it would be more about perspective. It was about when I was going through certain parts of this ride and I lost sight of the perspective and the big picture and what it's all really about. So there would have been some moments earlier on that I would have appreciated and enjoyed more than I did the first time around.
Would you rather have a third eye or a third arm? I don't make these questions up.
So I'm gonna say a third eye, because my right arm's pretty good, and then I could see, so I wouldn't get hit like that a little bit better if I had a third eye.
You might still be playing.
Right, I might still be playing now. So yes, I'll go with the third eye.
And now, what makes a great quarterback?
Oh, that's easy. Gosh, what makes a great quarterback?
So it's not so easy.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that is the toughest question. It's why we can't figure out who's going to be good and who's not good.
Yeah.
It's toughness, it's intelligence, it's the ability to think fast. It's accuracy, it's the ability to move. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, there's just so many things that you can't just describe unless you're there and you understand what it takes. And it's why there's only a few of them. There's only a few really good quarterbacks, because it takes so much packaged together in the right way to make a great one.
Do me one favor when you leave here.
Okay.
Don't question anymore whether you belong in the Hall of Fame. Please. No. Don't. You belong for 1,000 reasons. Not the least of which is your perseverance and your relentless pursuit of this dream that ended up in St. Louis, in a Super Bowl, multiple league MVPs, and somebody who's made a difference in people's lives, a Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner, and a wonderful example to anybody out there who's married, and a great father. This is one tremendous human being. Ladies and gentlemen, Kurt Warner.
Thank you, guys.